Be less petty with your time. Be less petty with your mind. Be less petty with your blame. All that petty shit is lame. Be less petty with your friends. Love first. Make amends. Be less petty with your life. Be less petty with your wife. Be less petty with your mom. Be less petty with your job. Be less petty. Be less petty. Be less petty, baby. Body aches, migraine, chronic illness, anger pains. All it comes from is being petty. Hey, I'm telling you now, you don't want to do it. Nope. Cause that petty shit will have you in ruin. Hey. Social media, yep, be less petty there. This podcast is not a valid substitute for therapy. This is an open conversation. It is not medical advice and should not be used as such. Please seek help with a medical professional if you are in a crisis. Hey, what is up, my Less Petty pals? It's your girl, Kellye Howard, and welcome back to Be Less Petty Comedy Self-Help Podcast, where we laugh, learn, and grow together by taking a look at the ways in which we can help ourselves be less menial, less small-minded, wasteful, aka petty, with our time, space, and energy. In today's episode, we are chatting with a true community activist about social and economic marginalization of POC. And we are geeked to have this conversation with her because she is constantly speaking up for the struggles that Black and Brown people face with unwavering commitment. And she does so in a funny, purposeful way. She's a comedian, actress, and a pillar of possibility, overcoming some of life's most challenging dramas to bring you laughs and clarity. She's a longtime comedy colleague and friend. You may have seen her on Netflix, They Ready, The Young Turks, Shaq's Comedy All-Stars, or on IG doing what she does, administering that truth serum that we all need. And if you can't say it, don't worry about it, because she'll say it for you. She just filmed her first 1-hour comedy special for HBO last week. Yes, I am talking about the hilarious Aida Rodriguez. But before we bring her in, y'all know we got to banter back and forth about the petty happenings from the last 2 weeks. And oh my God, some petty shit happened to me. So without further ado, let's welcome the cream to my coffee, the sun to my moon, the yes to my no. I'm doing too much. The smart and insightful co-host, primary therapist, Alexandra Garcia. Hey, girl.
The yes to my no. I love it. I love all these little things that you add. Hey.
I was like, as I'm reading it, I'm like, I'm doing the most right now.
Right. Let's just bring her in.
Let's just bring her in. How are you?
I'm good. You know, I'm a little tired on this Monday, and I'm excited to have this conversation. Super excited.
Yeah. I am too. Because this is, you know, the interesting thing, as I was kind of like looking up, first of all, what marginalization even meant, right? Mm-hmm. I'm like, oh shit, this is something that happens to us unknowingly, right? These are things that are like occurring around us all the time. These little, I don't know if you can call them micro marginalizations, but they're happening and we're not even aware of it. So I'm really excited to get some insight from Aida, because she like be in this shit. You know what I mean? She talks about it. She's always discussing this kind of stuff. And so
yeah,
this is great.
You know, and fun fact, Aida is actually an honorary sorority sister of mine. So I met her years ago at Jokes and Notes, right? Jokes and Notes is not around anymore.
No.
Right. So my sorority sisters put me on, and we went to one of her shows. My sorority sister and best friend, Anais, went to her show, and I got her shirt. Who does this bitch think she is? And then she has just continued to grow and blow up from there. But and I was like, I knew her. Too funny. So yeah, I'm always excited to talk to a sister about this deep stuff. So
yes, and you guys are both Puerto Rican. So
yeah, you know, I'm a mixed baby, Puerto Rican and Greek, Puerto Rican.
And I didn't know that.
You didn't know that? Wow,
no.
We got some things to catch up on. Yeah, my mom's Greek.
No.
Yeah, my dad's from Manatí, Puerto Rico. My mom's Greek.
Huh. Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Learn something new.
But yeah, so we're both Puerto Rican, but I know Aida's also Dominican as well, right?
I don't know.
Is she? Yeah, I believe, right? Quiz time. Puerto Rican and Dominican, and has a Cuban stepfather. I might be missing something. You know, these blended families. I got it right.
Nice. I'm Black and nigga. Um, my daddy's side of the family super nigga. My mama's side of the family black as hell, and that's what I am. So,
All right.
um, so I know you probably had some petty stuff happen to you this week, right? We got to chat.
Yeah, you know what? I felt like I was on a streak of like I didn't have pettiness happen to me, and then of course because it's life. But I'll make mine short and sweet because I know you have a juicy story. Mine is that old song and dance of someone wants to give an opinion on your life, on my personal life. And it hit me hard. Like it hit me right after work. I found out that someone had an opinion. And I immediately was activated. I felt it in my chest. I wanted to like pick up the phone and call this person. And I always say like opinion is the medium between knowledge and ignorance. But a lot of people don't have that mentality. So I think for a couple hours I was really activated and I was actually hurt by it. I was really hurt.
And what was the opinion, or is that not something you want to share on this?
No, it was it was on my personal life, on my relationship, and it was unkind. So yeah, it pissed me off, that's for sure. But
how long did you hang on to that pissed offness?
You know what? I made dinner, and after dinner I was watching TV and I was like, I'm not even paying attention to what's going on because I'm still mad about this. And not even mad. I'm not even because I was hurt. I was hurt. And it was coming out in anger, but it was for a couple hours. But after that, the next day I was like, you know what? All I can do is send blessings, but it got me.
Wow. Yeah. Well, I'm proud of you for sending blessings because that's hard to do when somebody be all up in your space trying to tell you what to do. To send them blessings, you want to send them everything but blessings.
Right. Well, what happened to you? Because you had
oh, girl. So I'm driving, right? You know I have an electrical car, right?
I didn't know that, but you fancy.
Yeah, I have an electric car. So because my car is electric and I have a dated electric car, sometimes when I'm hitting my peak on how much energy if I got more to do that day, I got to kind of like slow down. I got to cut the air off. I got to roll down the windows and I got to drive the maximum speed of 56 miles per hour in order not to burn my juices. Right. So I'm riding in my car and I'm seeing this chick up in front of me in this X5, this BMW X5. She's driving wild as hell. Her and this van is having an ego tangle, right? On Lakeshore Drive. I'm watching it happen. And then the van goes one way and she gets off on 53rd Street. I also get off on 53rd Street. There's a stop sign right there. She stops at the stop sign. I stop at the stop sign. Immediately after we get through the stop sign, she pulls over to the right. I'm just guessing maybe she dropped her phone. She dropped her coffee. I don't know. She's got a phone call to make. I ain't thinking shit about it. It ain't got nothing to do with me, right? So I pull off. She jumps right back behind me and is up on my ass, like right on my bumper. So I pull over and I jump out the car. I'm like, is there a problem? Why are you riding up on me like that? And she was like, bitch, you was riding up on me like that. And she like goes off, like snaps. And I'm like, what the fuck are you talking about? You're crazy. Like, I just watched you in an ego fight with another car way up ahead of me. I'm driving a very slow pace as to reserve my energy. Literally. I got no shit literally in my car, reserve my energy. I got no shit to do today and I ain't gonna have time to charge it, and she's going off. So I'm like, you're crazy. You're insane, like seriously crazy. And then I do the thing that you say that you really don't mean. I'm gonna pray for you. I'm gonna pray for you.
All the sarcasm.
But you know what I also noticed is the bitch didn't get out the car not one time. Like, you yelling from the car about what I did. I didn't jump out the car about it. Like, what, not to say I wanted to go back to my old school way of being. I'm trying to be less petty, of course, but I'm listening to Oprah, The Path Made Clear on audiobook. I'm having this beautiful Saturday afternoon and this broad like literally attacks me. Yeah. And so I get back in my car and I'm on this app, Sweet Green, trying to order me a salad. And I was like, I'm not going to pull off until she pulls off because she's batshit crazy. And then she pulls up on the side of me and is yelling through the damn window, you stupid bitch. And I just couldn't believe it. Like, all I could say was, you're crazy. That's literally all I could say to her. on so many levels, I felt sad for her. I was like, for you to even need to do this, you have so much anger.
Oh yeah.
You have so much anger. You're hurting so bad. You don't even notice how bad you're hurting. And you another Black woman coming at me for no reason.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like, we could have had a conversation.
Yeah.
We could have just powwowed like, hey, you was all up on my bumper, and I don't like when people drive on my bumper like that. Like, it could have literally been just a fucking conversation, but she tried to attack my life, and it bothered me for like the next hour. I was just in my head like, was I on her bumper? Did I do something to her? Like,
yeah.
I was feeling all some type of way about this. And then thankfully, my daughter's art show, she's 20, and it was like a room of 20 and 21-year-olds talking about vulnerability and their inner child and self-love. And it was such a beautiful space that I was like, oh, okay, this is the future.
Right.
Not the crazy bitch that pulled up on the side of me talking about I was on her bumper. You know what I mean? Like, so that was my petty moment this week. It bothered me for a minute.
Yeah.
It had my energy levels way too high.
Yeah. And I mean, I totally get jumping out the car, but from a safety standpoint, please don't ever jump out the car. Like, you just never know, you know, people's intentions these days. Unfortunately, it's just not safe. So I'm gonna need you to stay in the car. Okay. Thanks.
That's very true. It's not safe. And you know what? After the fact, I thought about that. I was like, Kellye, she could have shot you. She
ran you over.
Ran you over. It's so many things that could have happened. But at the time, my ego was like, who does this bitch think she is?
Right. As I would say.
Nobody like this.
Hopefully she comes across, be less petty, and, you know, she can have some of this energy and join us.
Oh, God. I wonder what Ida's petty story is.
I know. So I see her on Instagram all the time. There's a lot going on.
A lot of petty stories, huh? So let's. Well, I am excited to bring her in to hear her petty story. I know that our chat is excited to hear her too. I've already introduced her in the intro, and if you were on time, you would have heard it. If not, yo lost. I want y'all to start clapping and snapping and giving so much love to one of my friends, Aida Rodriguez. Hey, girl.
What's up? I listen to those stories and I'm like, woo, growth.
Yes.
Alejandra, I knew that was you. And I was like, wait a minute, why isn't she saying anything? And then I was like, maybe this is another Alejandra.
I know my name is so common. There's like a million of us, but we didn't have time. So I was like, I'll just say it.
No, but I know that face. So it's good to see you.
I'm just so impressed by the fact that she said Alejandra. Like she just
of course.
Alejandra.
Hold on real quick. When we met to like rehearse about the show, I was like, it's Aida, right? It's not Ada. And she was like, you right, Alex. Okay, thanks for that. And she's like, I just can't remember. I'm like, Kellye, just drop the A and just go with the I. She's like, that's a great way to remember it. So we had the whole conversation about saying your name right, as we should.
Thank you.
I think the entire time I've known Aida, she has checked me on her name. Every time. She'd be like, Kellye, it's Aida. And I'd be like, you're right. I'm sorry.
But you know what? At first I wouldn't. I would let people call me because I let people call me Ada for so long. And then, you start getting a little like notoriety and people think like, you're the new Terrell Owens. Now you're Terrell. You weren't Terrell. And I'm like, no, my name's been Aida my whole life. I'm my grandmother's namesake, right? Both of my grandmothers are Aida, A-I-D-A. And the thing is that when you grow up like biculturally in America, it's like if your name is Shantavius and white people want to call you Shantavius, and then you just give up. You're just like, you know what? And I just stopped saying no. I started saying, you know what? That's not. No, my grandmother was like, tu nombre es Aida, dile que te llamen Aida, and that porque ese es mi nombre, like that's my name. And so I had to start doing it because advocating for myself started there. Like it started with something that simple, making sure people said my name the right way. And Kellye, you have a different spelling of a typical Kellye, and people want to call you whatever they want to call you.
She checked me on it. I spelled her name wrong.
They spell it wrong more than they say it wrong. They usually say it right. Or you get a random white person that'd be like, is it Kellye? Is it?
Yeah.
No, it's not. It's just Kellye.
No.
Yeah.
We learn how to say all of the names of, that they consider normal. So why can't you say our names? Our names matter. They're culturally connected to us. A lot of people like to make fun of our names. One of the videos that I had with the Young Turks that went viral was me checking Laura Ingraham because they were making fun of Alejandra Ocasio-Cortez because she pronounced her name. And they were like, oh, it's Alejandra. And I'm like, bitch, we say your name. We learn Laura. We learn Laura. We don't call you Laura, right? Your name is Laura Ingraham. We can say Laura in Spanish. Learn how to say my name. And it's annoying. But anyway, hello.
Hi. And someone said taking ownership of our names is one of the strongest things we can ever do.
Thank you, Joshua. That is so true.
It is. Absolutely.
That is a good point. So I'm interested to know what happened to you, Petty, this last week that has been, that you want to talk about, that you want to share with us. Do you have anything that's happened, Petty?
You know what's funny? I was talking about it today on my live and I got derailed because, you start talking and then you just go from one stream of consciousness to another. But I was talking about Earthquake posted this meme with this healthcare professional. She had on, we don't know who she is. She had on a nurse's outfit and she had a sign that said, last year's heroes are this year's unemployed. And her point was that healthcare professionals are going to be fired in some places if they do not get vaccinated, right? Mm-hmm. And so she spelled heroes wrong, right? And that bothered me because that's who I am. But also I saw like the comments going, every comment section now, before it used to be liberals and conservatives, now it's vaccinated versus unvaccinated, anti-vaxxers and all of that. So I said it's the misspelling of the word heroes for me. And I just went about my business. And I opened up Instagram and I saw that comment got over 1,000 responses, people responding, people going back and forth, fighting, and people adding me, like saying, you're part of the problem. You don't respect our healthcare professionals. It was like all kinds of, and I was preparing, because I keep these notebooks. I was preparing my rebuttals for all of these Instagram, all of
you keep a rebuttal notebook?
Yes.
I was on Instagram.
Because that's how I practice. What people don't know is that that's how I'm practicing my bits, like my wit, my humor. Like it keeps the muscle for me going. Like tweets for me is like get a joke off in 100 and whatever characters. And I sat down and I realized that I was like, we are not doing that. One, this is how ridiculous the internet is. You're going back and forth with people who, one, failed science. They're not scientists. They're not healthcare professionals. Two, we don't even know who this person in this meme is. We're just assuming this is actually a nurse. That could be a Botox nurse. She could be the person that does an IV drip, ain't never been in a COVID room a day of her life. Secondly, she could not even be a nurse. That could be her Halloween costume. Somebody took this picture, made a meme, and put it on Instagram to push their point. And here I am exercising my mental energy on trying to prove to a bunch of strangers on the internet that I know more than them, or that my point is more valid than them. And I had an epiphany and I was like, what? Like, what do you have to prove to a bunch of people who don't know what they are talking about? And if you multiply that by how many, because so many of us, the problem with the internet is that everybody has a bullhorn, and some of the people who have the bullhorn are dumb. They don't know what the hell they're talking about. And I don't like to call people dumb, but they don't know what they're talking about. And here you are let me show you my office. You see that? Those books, that's just.
You went mute.
All I do is read and study because I I had a complex about proving that I was smart because I didn't get to finish college because I got married and had my kids. And I've always been trying to prove to people how smart I am because I don't have a degree. I'm still smart. And I realized that all of that came from that. And that's what happens on the internet. It is just an extension of me trying to prove to people that, yes, I am smart. Yes, I am smart. And I was like, I don't have to do that.
No.
And that was my moment because people were like really, and the worst part is that the people that were going in on me, they were misspelling in them like rebutting with their scientific responses to me. And I never said anything about a vaccine. The only thing that I said was make a joke because she misspelled heroes. And it was
too much time in their hands.
Yeah, I would have allowed myself. And so I just went and wrote a joke about a joke. I said, oh no, let me write my first joke post special. And that's what I did. But I almost, because I'll go to people's profiles and I'm like, bitch, how dare you? You look dumb. I could see your page. Look where you spend your time. You don't want to get a vaccination, but you ate a big meal, a Big Mac, big meal. Like, how dare you? And then I was like, oh no, I'm
so glad you didn't do that.
No, I didn't. But I would have. And I have been known to unleash a very all caps fuck you on Instagram or Twitter with a bunch of exclamation points to somebody who @s me because I feel like they're being confrontational. Mm-hmm. I realize that so who cares? Like, I don't owe them anything.
Exactly.
Mm-hmm. I am so glad this is the story that you told because this goes right in line with what Be Less Petty is. And my Less Petty pals out there, if y'all are listening, like, this is it. Your time, space, and energy, like that is all you have control over. And if you give that away, right? If you give that away, it detracts from who you are. It takes a part of you with it. And so that is so beautiful that was like your, I love it. I love it.
I have a message for you from a friend who's a Latina educator. And she said, some of the least intelligent people I've ever met have degrees. And that's a fact for sure.
Oh, thank you for saying that. You know, it's just something that I had to deal with for a long time. My closest friends are very academic driven women. I have a friend who's an engineer who works for Bill Gates. I have another friend who's like a marketing genius who works in corporate America. I've always been surrounded by, academics and intellectual people. Julissa Alcerraya is my friend, and she's an author. And I had to reconcile within myself that my intelligence doesn't come from, it's funny because I have a lot of friends who have master's degrees that I've employed and they've worked for me. And I have a friend who graduated from Harvard that was my assistant on a production. And even still in my own mind, because of my own issues, I'm like still thinking I'm not as smart as,
And I think that's something that a lot of us struggle with. Like, I didn't graduate. I got 27,000 credits, but I never graduated. You know what I mean? Like, I kept going back, yearning for this degree. I mean, even as recent as last year, asking my husband, like, okay, I'm doing this podcast and I claim that I know all this information, this psychology. Should I go back and get a degree in psychology? And he's like, no, your life is your degree. You have experience in all of this stuff and you're valid in being able to speak on it without necessarily needing to, have a piece of paper.
And I have two, and they're behind me, over $100,000 in debt. Thank God, they're paused right now. I mean, I'm very proud, but you go into debt, it feels like a burden. And then once you get a degree, now it's the ranking of, what school did you go to?
Oh, yeah.
It never ends. It's never enough. I have colleagues who will go on to get their PhD because they want to be called doctor. And I've told myself I'm going to do it because it makes sense for my career, not because I have something to prove. So I appreciate all our different levels and stories, and it never ends. So we got to be enough with what we doing.
Oh, I feel so much respect for people who pursue their post-secondary educations. Like I have a friend who with a baby, went back to business school and got her master's and her MBA. And I have a lot of respect for education. My children are both educated. My daughter was the valedictorian of her school. And I'm so proud of that, because that is the degree that I wanted. She went and got it because she loves academia, and that's who she is. And that was her degree that she earned. But like for me, it was an accomplishment in that way. And I was able to let that whole thing go about furthering my debt to go get a degree just to be patted on the head by people who probably don't respect me anyway, and has nothing to do with that.
Right. And nowadays, it's probably easier to just go into specific things you want to learn, because you usually don't need everything that the degree is trying to teach you, but you got to get it in order to get the degree. When you can go learn very specifically nowadays with like masterclass and fucking YouTube or the library. You know what I mean? Like you can get very specific on what you want to know. So before we get into the conversation of marginalization of POC, we do a game called gaslighting. So we're going to do that game, right?
Gaslighting. 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 Gaslighting.
Kellye just recorded that intro and she was so excited. Was waiting.
I can't get that Be Less Petty song was in my head from the first time I heard it. Today I was listening to the whole song and I was like, that's Kellye. But I don't know why I like that song, but I guess it sends a subconscious message to me. And then I just remembered that earlier this week, I was like, last week, be less petty, be less. And I was like, where does that come? And then I was like,
when I first did that song and I put it on a podcast, I thought it was too long, because it used to just be my intro before we do a live podcast. It would be my intro. And I was like, is it too long? And people was like, no, I like the song. It makes me remember to be less petty. I'm like, good.
Yeah.
Right. So gaslighting is a game where we share a word or a phrase, and you tell the first thing that comes to mind, like a gaslighting, right? When people gaslight you, they trigger you. What is the first thing that come to mind when we say this word? So I'll let Alex go first, and then I'll share.
Okay. Women in comedy.
Unfunny.
Oh, shit.
I did not expect her to say that.
I did not either. We're going to have to come back to that thought.
Right. Do you want me to, are you going, Kellye? Or want me to
Yeah.
Okay.
I was stuck on the answer. I was like, what happened?
I think you need to understand why I said that before you react to it, because it's definitely, you said, what's the first thing that comes to mind?
Yeah.
And that's the point of it, is so that we don't really have an explanation.
It triggers me. It triggers me because that's what I hear constantly. Go ahead.
Yep, I do too. Social media.
Toxic.
Academic research.
Null and void.
Fair.
Trump.
Trump, I would say, when I think about Trump, I think about hurt and disturbed.
I could see that.
Sex work.
Complicated.
That's a great response. Immigration.
Immigration.
So much.
When I think about immigration, I think about everyone.
The last one I have is advocacy.
Imperative.
I have several more. No, but I'll just use a few. Marriage.
Marriage. Contractual.
Ooh, interesting. Disease.
Inevitable.
And the last one I'll do is, let's see, it could pick a soda cracker, it could pick a boo. Police.
Misguided.
All right. Thank you for playing that.
All right, one more. Joy.
Essential.
Okay. All right. I like that.
Mm-hmm.
Cool. All right. So now we're going to get into the meat of the conversation, which is about marginalization. I'm not even going to lie. In all of my ignorance, it's not something that I tend to talk about or think about often. I think, when you're of the oppressed, you just kind of feel it.
Move on, and you have to live and survive.
Yep. And it is what it is. And so, and I'm pretty certain that maybe a lot of people don't even know what marginalization is. So I'm going to put that up on the screen. And if you don't mind for me, Aida, reading the definition.
So marginalization is the treatment of a person, group, or concept as insignificant or peripheral. Examples of marginalized groups or marginalized populations include, but are not limited to, groups excluded due to race, gender, identity, sexual orientation, age, physical ability, language, and or immigration status. Be less petty, be less petty.
Thank you for reading that. So, Alex, if you want to kind of chime in with your ideas around, or I don't know where to start with this. I can't even. I can't.
I mean, I think I'll just go when I hear the topic, obviously what I do, I live and breathe wellness and mental health. And and I've said it time and time again on this show, I work in a higher level of care, right? They take private insurance. I work in a partial hospitalization program. I love the company I work for. I love what I do. And it's an everyday reminder that there are so many people that don't have the privilege to come and get the treatment that I provide, and others that I work with, right? All these amazing people and team, like they just can't get in there. We don't take Medicaid. We don't take, we don't do pro bono work or any of that. And that is something that weighs heavy on my heart. And there are times of like, man, am I a sellout? Am I not doing enough? And, like as someone who is in debt and all that money that we just talked about, if I work for a community agency, I would be living in poverty, legit. Where I work now, I love what I do. And, I make good money. So that's where my mind goes to immediately. And, anytime I get a Black or brown person and all the rest in between, I think I overcompensate, and I want to make sure that they get the most of every minute that they're there with us because they deserve it. So that's where my mind goes to immediately. But Aida, where are your thoughts right now on this?
Well, it's so funny because I've been dealing with, I started working on community stuff when I was a kid. There was one of the scholarships that was offered in Florida is called the Silver Knight Scholarship, which is for community service. But I think that it came from home. My grandmother was always of service to people in the community, and we were poor, and she would go out and feed homeless people. And we'd be like, we ain't got no food. Like, we barely got any food. But she always believed that that's how you give and you get. And she used to always tell me, if you keep your fist closed, nothing goes out, but nothing comes in. And it just programmed me to always think about helping people who were less fortunate. I never really, the concept of me being less fortunate never resonated with me because of the way that I was brought up, even though I was marginalized as hell, as Wendy said, being pushed to the margins of society, literally. I grew up on food stamps, WIC, poor, in a poor community where violence was standard and status quo. And I never, ever thought of myself as being one of those people, right? Like, and even when I went away to school, I remember the lady in the financial aid being very upset because my birth certificate had a W on it, right? And not my birth certificate, my paperwork had a W on it. My birth certificate was left blank because I was born in Boston, and being Puerto Rican is not a race. The race is white or Black, right. But I wasn't neither. So the vital statistics office just left the shit blank. Wow. So and this woman was having a fit because somewhere, I guess somebody was just like, just put me down as white. And she was like, your paperwork says that you're white and you're not white. And I was like, no shit. Like, I don't want to be white. I need financial aid. Like, I need this financial aid. Lady, like, yeah, like, put me down for whatever you need to put me down for. But I never understood the concept of marginalization because, like most people of color, Black people in this country who grow up under those circumstances, all we know how to do is survive. And we just continue to press forward in spite of, and we don't have time to think about our marginalization because we too busy figuring out how to get out of this, how to get to this, how to get to the next point. So it didn't hit me until later in my own personal work as a person trying to figure out where my instinct to fight came from, like, or to go off on somebody or to like beat somebody for trying to do something to my kid or just anything that drove me to this place. And I didn't realize that it came from my circumstances and how I grew up and how I survived. And even though us who are comedians that can joke about like some of the darker things in our lives is because that's how we learn to deal with dark shit when we were kids. Yo mama, that's your mama, that's your mama, that. And those are the things that we do for survival. So just grasping the concept of what marginalization meant is something that really has helped in terms of me taking steps toward my own healing, my mental health, because I personally never had the luxury of studying my marginalization because I was too busy in the middle of it. Yeah. And and I point that out because like with women who are white and call themselves feminists, who can oftentimes co-opt and appropriate the struggle of people of color because they consider themselves victims of marginalization, which they can be, but there are levels to this. They have an opportunity. It's easy to sit down at home when you got a trust fund and a house and think about your marginalization because you have that opportunity and privilege. But those of us who grew up in the gutter eating that hard ass cheese and that terrible peanut butter from Wick never had that. We never had the luxury to sit down and say, it's tough being marginalized. Right. So, it came later for me in terms of understanding why my behavior can be the way it is. And it's because I was up against the wall and I didn't even know it. The wall had always been there. It's not like it popped up out of nowhere. The wall was always there. So we just learned this. That's what we doing. All right, let's go. Let's go. That's how we survive. And so it came to me later.
In the book Hood Feminism, she talks a lot about that very thing. Is like, you got white feminists and they're like for the movement. Yeah, but not really, because as long as we have, Black women that are, and the interesting thing too is you always have this, and I'm not gonna say just Black women, but POC, right? You always have this thing of like, you don't make enough to get the support that you need from the government, but you don't make little enough to get the support that you need, but you don't make enough to actually survive either. So you're in this middle ground, right? And left unsupported, yet they're out there making the moves and doing the things they need to do for the community. And that's where the hood feminism come from. It's like, we're out here making it work in spite of, and yet you're sitting back talking about, I'm a feminist and we need to do this and we need to do that, when in fact, none of what you're doing is supporting what's really going on over here. And as long as this group of people is left out, then the feminist movement is lacking. You know what I'm saying? And so
suffrage, as she mentioned, the Equal Rights Act, the suffrage movement, the Suffrage Act, like it's, and not that I wanted to shift the attention onto white women, because I think that it is important to, this happens with white people and men too, even with the LGBTQIA plus community. When people say, well, I have a producer that I'm working with on something, and she's a white woman, and she was like, if I was a Black person, I'd be mad too. She was like, because gay people just skipped over Black people. And I'm like, that's because white men can be gay. And so they are a priority on the food chain. And not to say that the LGBTQ movement is not a valid movement and that those people's lives don't matter. But because whiteness is a part of it, then it a lot of groups that are marginalized capitalize on the marginalization, and it can be, it can be very it's a complicated conversation to have. I'm Latina. Within the Latino spectrum, there are white people, Black people, Asian people, indigenous people, and there is a system of oppression. There's anti-Blackness and colorism and all of that. Really, that stuff exists. And I think until we start unpacking these things in the realest of ways, we'll never achieve solution, because we're not being honest about the things. Indian people and Asian people are also considered people of color, but they also practice a lot of anti-Blackness in Black communities. And so when people get to say that they are people of color, they use the BIPOC term. My daughter and I were just having this conversation. We have to be mindful of how those things are also weaponized against Black people in this country, and why it causes this dissent and this divide that we need to be honest and open about so that we can really move forward.
Yeah, that's so interesting. I always tell Mike, I tell him, I have so much respect and love for him because he could have chose white. You know what I'm saying? He chose to be part of the oppression with me. He had, and I said, you had the option to like really focus your energy on being more assimilated, and had you probably would have had a much simpler, I don't want to call it completely simpler, but a much simpler life than what you've had to deal with being married to me, living in a hood, walking down the street with me, being judged with me. It's like you chose this. You have a mixed daughter, a half Asian, half Black daughter that has to now, it's different. I'm not going to say they don't, half Asian, half white women don't deal with some of the same oppression, but it's just different. And if we're being honest, we know that it's just different. And so,
right.
No, we it's so complicated, because the fact that colonization runs so deep and the way that they did what they did has really caused so much division. And now the internet has really incited it even more. I often wonder how we get back to solution, because now even when you talk about creating pathways to, for us to have conversation and dialogue, people are cynical about that, because cynicism is just at an all-time high and it's corny. But the reality of it is, if we start thinking about it, is that nobody's packing up in boats going back to Europe, Latin America, or Africa. So we're either going to have to figure it out or we're not, because nobody's going anywhere. And, we got to figure out solution. And as corny as that may sound to some people, nobody can live in conflict forever. At some point, it will show up in a very ugly way. But I think it's important to have these conversations, because yes, Wendy, there's a lot of anti-Blackness and colorism in the Latin community. Also, there's a lot of anti-Blackness in the Black American community, as well as the Asian community.
I feel like in all community, like if you look into everywhere. Any culture, in Asian culture, like every single culture has some way of it trickling in. Like
of course, it's by design. Right. I mean, it's by design. When you go to the continent of Africa and in the Congo or in the Ivory Coast, they've banned lightening cream because it's gotten so dangerous for people to lighten their skin. We have to really, really unpack anti-Blackness as something that it is something that was given to the world because it was part of the plan to divide and conquer. So it's such a big tool in capitalism, right? That's how they made white people feel better than Black people, is by telling them, at least you're white, even if they were poor and insignificant in the bigger picture to those people. They were like, at least you're better than the Black people. But it's a a tool that's been used, and we have to just be honest about it, because it just exists everywhere. And it's so complicated to talk about, because it causes a lot of, you're dealing with people's issues, right? You're dealing with people's issues.
And it's these different levels of Blackness too. It's like, me and Alex talk about it all the time, right? We didn't move from the north side to the south side, and now I'm around, the blacker of the blacks, and it's like I'm judging them as not as Black as them, but kind of, and it's like their behavior is not okay. And so, and it's so much more to who they are and where they come from and what they deal with in society that I don't understand. And so for me to look at them and say, you shouldn't be doing this, or you shouldn't be acting like that, or now you're less than because of, is just another form of anti-Blackness. You know what I'm saying? It's another form of me ousting them, oppressing them, in fact, in my own way. So
yeah, I mean, that's an ongoing conversation we have, right, Kellye? And I think a few things, Aida, that you said that really, this is such a vast topic, right? I think when you talk about marginalized communities within the Latino community, right, the metrics of, right, I think you were going to get financial aid, right? It's so complicated because we are not just one group, right? There's pockets under this big umbrella. And folks, a lot of times outside of the Latino community or Latinx community, whichever you use, they're like, Alex, why is it so complicated? And it's just like, because we're not all from the same place, and we all don't have the same struggles. We have commonalities. And I agree with you. I think on your Instagram, you say all the time, we're stronger together. And against this issue, we are. And it's just so hard because it pisses me off on forums where they don't have enough options, or the option is just white, and that's not okay. Or they just don't have your subgroup, which just I'm not okay with. That pisses me off. And then we're not counted. We are then washed away. And, if someone's degree isn't counted, or their needs, right? If they're, applying for services. So that is a huge issue. And then when you talk about giving back, right? I used to work for a nonprofit where I had to train corporate white professionals to come out to high schools on the west side of Chicago. Education across this country, as we know, is just, it's not equal. And that's putting it nicely. We're talking about buildings where I would train students and there would be a mouse or mice that would come out. And I'm very afraid of rodents, right? And no student should learn in that environment. Going into these schools that feel like prisons and not schools, but I had to make white people feel comfortable coming into communities that they would never step foot in, right? And a lot of my work, I was finding is like, why do I care about making them feel comfortable? Like, no, this is their life every single day. And if you have a problem with it, then what are you going to do to change it? Whatever corporate partner, like, put some funds down or something. But those two things really, really hit me hard when we're talking about marginalized communities, for sure.
And so, go ahead.
No, I'm listening. Go ahead.
Well, I'm just thinking about, Be Less Petty is all about like, what can we do, right? What can we do within our circumstances to, I don't want to say lessen the blows, but make sure that we are as healthy as we can be within the system, because it is what it is, right? And we can continue to fight it, and we will continue to fight it, but there are certain things that happen that is just out of our control. So in the meantime, right,
what do we do?
What are some things that you do, Aida, that you've noticed helps with dealing with these constant everyday blows of oppression and marginalization? Like, what are some things that help you with your mental health and clarity and all of that, aside from coming for people on IG?
Well, what I will tell you is that I correct I correct bad behavior that's in my presence. I think on a micro level, because what happens is when you see something that is wrong, if you're a man and you see another man abusing a woman, or if you're a human being and you see another human being mistreating a non-binary person or a trans person, if you are an adult and you see another adult mistreating a child, and you don't do anything, you carry that with you. It stays with you, because
I should have did something.
It doesn't, and that's why I said when we did the gaslighting, when I said disease and I said inevitable, is because disease is dis-ease in the body, and a lot of the emotional stuff you deal with feeds those things that develop in your body to be diseased later. And so when you internalize those things and you don't say anything, that see something, say something sounds very basic and people make fun of it and mock it, but it's true. And so I've learned, like, even with relatives, if I hear something that sounds a little off color, anti-Black, I'll be like, nah, we don't do that. Because not just because my kids are Black, American Black, and I identify as a Black Latina, so Latina, but because it's not okay. It doesn't, they don't have it. It just, you don't have to say it about my kid or you. It's not okay to say, period. And I just think it is important to be able to say in comedy. I've been in the presence of some Mexican comedians in LA who say, like, have said some fucked up shit about Black American people. And the other people just sit there and they'll say, oh my God, I can't believe he said that. And I'll be like, yo, what are you talking about? Why did you say that? That's not cool. That's not all right. Like,
Right.
That's so how could you say that? Look, you know what people think of you? Like, and I know that's petty, but I'll be like, you know, somebody looking at you right now thinking you don't have your papers. Like, you know, like, and then,
Right.
but it just gives people perspective, because sometimes people need to be brought back down to reality in the ground to understand that in the big scheme of things, all of us are significant or none of us are.
Right.
Facts. Have you ever spoke up and said something and got clapped back for saying something?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I mean,
because I think that's a lot of people's reservation is like, this is going to become a fight. This is going to become more than just me saying something.
Right.
I mean, on that Netflix They Ready special, when I talked about Latinos being anti-Black, I got a lot of backlash from Latinos who were, first of all, felt like I was telling, like I was snitching. And then the other thing is that they don't feel like they're Black, or they don't feel like they're anti-Black. And they thought that I was being, or they were like, well, if you like Black people so much, then why don't you move them all into your house? And I was like, I only got 2, but I'm not moving all of them in my house, but I do have my own 2 children. So, but it's like, I got, you know, people were very upset because it's a conversation that we are just now having, where Black America had this conversation a long time ago. Latinx people, Latinos swept it under the rug, and it is exploding now because Black Latinos are like, nah, you're not doing that to us anymore. Now they have the bullhorn. They have an opportunity to be heard. And so, yes, I've gotten backlash and clapback and people, you know, saying horrible things to me because it's an ugly truth.
Right.
Now, in my own ignorance, when you say Black Latino, do you mean like somebody that is half Black, half Latino, or you mean just their skin color is dark and so they're considered Black?
It can be either. You know,
but what would you say as the definition of Afro-Latina or Afro-Latino, like when you kind of like Google it?
So Afro-Latino it's two. Well, I talked to the woman who I think came up with the term. So it's twofold, because it's people who identify with their African roots. And those people that say, hey, so it's the people who identify with their African roots, and come from Latin American countries. And then there are people that it also has to do with being Black. And the thing about that got hijacked,
you mean
that are Black, like they're whether they Halle Berry Black or Celia Cruz Black, or you know, they're Black, because Black has nothing to do with ethnicity. It doesn't have any. It's the race, and it has nothing to do with nationality. And when they took the slaves, the slaves were dispersed throughout Latin America and the Caribbean. They didn't just come to to North America, and so one of the things that Latin America did was come up with all these terms to describe Blackness, not to say Black, but it really is Black. You know, Puerto Ricans say mulata, morena, like, but people like, I don't know what you're talking about, real Tizok.
I don't know what that
It's
means either, but
people like, because everybody wants to tell everybody what everybody else is, and tell people who, based on all of this stuff, black is black is black. It doesn't matter if you put Halle Berry next to me or one of Quincy Jones's daughters next to me. Nobody questions them being black. Just because and this is something that white people created too. So like, let's be clear about this. This whole proximity to the blackness rule that came from white people. When you say we don't follow the one drop rule, you're talking about yourself, because you are definitely not speaking for the masses. Because if that was the case, then a lot of people wouldn't be facing the discrimination that they feel based on the texture of their hair or their features or whatever it is. So blackness is something that, everybody wants to define now and everybody wants to own. But the reality of it is that blackness is a spectrum, just like everything else. And when people say people are always like chastising these mixed black people and saying that they're not black, but the machine will tell these people that they are black. There's a diaspora, an African diaspora. People who are Afro-Latinos identify as black. Those are the black people that come from Latin America. They have a duality in their cultural reality, is they are rooted in they have their African roots, and they also deal with the Latinate culture. They were colonized by Spain, and it's the black people who were colonized by Spain versus the black people in the West Indies who were colonized by Great Britain versus the ones who were colonized by the Dutch versus the ones who were colonized by these white people here. The reality of it is that black people are all over the world, and they all have different dialects, and they all have different complexions, and they all have different aesthetics. Nonetheless, black people who were taken from the motherland and dispersed for profit and gain, abused and mistreated, and they come from all over the world. And now you have other people trying to tell other people what black is. You foundational, you not found. Black is black is black. And there are a lot of people, Kellye, they could put you in the Dominican Republic and Puerto Rico and Colombia, and there's somebody who looks just like you who does not know how to speak English.
Oh, I got married in the Dominican, and we was like, I was talking to people like, hey, do you know? And he started speaking. I was like, oh, we can't communicate because I don't know Spanish and you don't know English. So have a nice day. So yeah, I agree. That's
the also this one, the 1992, the Mexican government officially recognized African culture as being one of the three. Thank you for saying that, because they got black people in Mexico too, and it's so, like, you got all these people with all this idea of what, now God bless every single person who wants to create their subgroup and say, we are this, we are that, you're not this, you're not that. The masses don't identify that. The workforce does not identify that. The education system does not. The banking system doesn't identify that. So you could do all of that all you want. When them crackers look down and they say, you this black, you blickety black, you light skin black, you Asian black, it doesn't matter. The reality of it is until we address the real issue, which is white supremacy in the world, we won't get it. All of that won't matter. And it's unfortunate, but we have to hear this all the time. It's constant.
It's so interesting. I'm glad you brought that up, right? There's so many different definitions of Afro-Latino and all of that, right? And the short term that I've always used is, right, Black Latinos who have maybe significant amount of African heritage, right? And usually you'll see that based on how folks look, right? I don't identify as Afro-Latina, I'm not. And I think sometimes you have to even be careful what you were saying. It shouldn't be only based on how you present and look, right? My sorority sister and best friend, 100% Puerto Rican. Her mom is light-skinned Puerto Rican, and her dad is Afro-Latino. If you just saw him, right, just looked at him like, oh, that is a black man, an African-American man. As soon as he opens his mouth, he's Puerto Rican, right? She's birth of these two people. She has lighter skin. But even within the Latino community, she is not allowed, per se, to identify as Afro-Latina. And I have a problem with that. I'm like, if someone was biracial, mom white, dad black, and they came out quote unquote light skin, they can still identify as black, right? Or tell me if I'm wrong. But how can this Afro-Latina not be able to do that? And again, her dad is Black. If you saw both her parents, again, I don't have that. My dad's 100% Puerto Rican, was very light, all that. So thoughts on that?
Well, you know what? That's it's a confrontational topic, right? Because once we start talking about that, people because the truth of it is that in Latin America, like I said, we are just now having a conversation that Black American people had years ago. Spike Lee did School Days addressing this colorism a long time ago, because this is very problematic, because it does leave groups of people out in the pasture where they don't have anywhere to identify, because those labels, whatever, don't exist. And that's why it's important for people to own. The problem is with Afro-Latinidad is that a lot of Latinos who have a Black parent or a Black grandparent who don't physically present they don't present as Black, have appropriated the term because they identify with their African roots. And then what they do is erase the darker skinned Black people in Latin America who've been erased in the first place. And that's where all the pushback is, because
and that's fair.
A lot of people get upset when they ask me to be on Afro-Latino panels, Afro-Latinx panels. And they're always like, why don't you go get a dark-skinned person? So me, when I have truth serum, I'll go get a dark-skinned person. Or, I'll suggest, hey, you should have a darker skinned person, so that the spectrum is, even with indigenous Latinos, Latinx people who often get shut out of the conversation. And because indigenous people get shitted on universally, but I think it's just a very complicated
matter. Yeah,
it's rooted in pain, though. And so when we talk about people of a darker hue, wherever group you're talking about in the world, it's about understanding, absolutely, not taking up space from folks that have been historically marginalized. Absolutely. And that is what a lot of people need to understand. And so when we talk Afro-Latinidad, is very complicated, because a person who is Afro-Latino, who's somebody who's Black in America, for example, Rashida Jones, Kadada Jones, Halle Berry, Sally Richardson, who's from Chicago, Zoe Kravitz, like all of those people in American culture are Black. But when you put those people in Latin America, they call them mestizo. And that is also a result of white supremacy and oppression, because the reality of it is that you created all of these terms just not to say Black. And it's problematic. Two things can be true at the same time. A light-skinned person and a Black person, darker-skinned Black person can exist, both be marginalized, and the darker-skinned person experience far more discrimination because they're darker skin. That is true. But that does not undo the discrimination that the lighter-skinned person experiences because they're lighter skin, because to the white people, they are still Black. And that's the conversation that we can't have, because is rooted in pain, which is why I've backed away from the conversation and as a whole, because I don't want to be the participating and causing the pain of somebody else. For me, it's like, y'all go ahead, y'all have the conversation.
Yeah. And I want folks that are watching and chiming in, if you have any questions or comments, please shoot them through, because this is such a vast, complicated topic.
It's so deep. I want to go read
it. Folks, we just be arguing, and we all just need to come together, right? Listening to understand, not trying to trump one another, but holding space for people, advocating for other communities, all of that.
So aside from speaking up and checking people when they are, and I don't want to use the word checking because that's all automatically has a negative connotation, right? I'm checking you, putting you in your place. Aside from making it known that this is inappropriate, what are some other ways that you help combat this idea of marginalization in our country?
One of the biggest, I think, things that I've focused on is economics, because I think that a lot of the things that drive racism is capitalism. I mean, we get so caught up in our feelings about representation and emotional and about being seen and about being heard. And at the end of the day, to these corporations who have implemented the systems that are rooted in white supremacy, who benefit greatly from this, don't give a damn about us as human beings. They don't care about our pain. They're not listening to Afro-Latinos, Latinx people talk. They don't care about that. All they care is about the dollar and white supremacy has been the greater tool. So I think it's important for people to understand their economic power. So for me, that's where I'd like to direct my focus. And that's what I've been working towards, is like economic workshops for people in marginalized communities, understanding the power of their dollar, circulating the dollar in the communities longer than what it is, because our money doesn't stay in our communities enough to make an impact and to improve our communities. One thing that I will tell people to do is, which is very simple, when you donate money to organizations, research the organization that you donate the money to and make sure that it is actually going to the groups. I like to donate to organizations that are that everybody who's there is a volunteer. The people that are getting salaries and have a lot of those bigger corporations that get money, you hear about them collecting money for communities who don't get the money or get the money years later. Just understanding who you're putting your dollars into, and really, observing and understanding where that is a very powerful tool, because it's something you can control. So if you live in a neighborhood and there's a Korean store in your neighborhood, and when you go in there, they follow you around and they mistreat you, then you may have to walk a couple blocks further to go to a store of somebody who treats you with respect, of someone who looks like you. But if we started walking further away from those stores that treat us like that, and they started feeling the economic shift for that happening, then they will have to reconsider their policies, or they'll just be gone. And so I think it's important for us to, it's easier said than done, but it seems so hard when you tell people to boycott or how to redirect their dollars. But if you give them practical ways of doing it, there's a black dry cleaner 7 blocks away, but this Mexican dry cleaner, when you walk in there, doesn't say hi, doesn't treat you like a customer. Walk the 7 blocks. It's good for your health. You're getting some cardio, and you're investing money in someone who looks like you and treats you better. And I think we need to start doing stuff like that. So for me, it's about dropping information like that to help people understand, because it's overwhelming to think you have to change the world. But if you change the world by changing what's going on in your world,
be the change you want to see in the world. It's been said.
So that means all of us can take a break from Amazon and Prime.
I was just about to ask, that was my next question. Do you shop on Amazon, Ida?
We all.
I do shop.
We all do.
But I'll tell you, in the last, after I realized how much money Amazon was making and how the workers were not being able to pee or go to the bathroom, I haven't. It's been months since I shopped on Amazon, and I've been like buying stuff like the moisturizer for my face is from a Black woman that, and I buy her products. My daughter buys her products, or just really investing in people that I know who have companies that are trying to come up. I think it's important to really understand where your dollars are, because your dollars are really your power, because they don't see anything else. They're not going to see our humanity. We can march all we want, right? We've marched all we wanted. But when we made that impact on Wells Fargo had to make a turn. They had to have a shift because the dollars were being impacted. And that's how you make a difference.
Yeah. Absolutely. I totally agree with that. And I would add to that as well. I mean, I know we were talking about the financial debt education in all its form, if it's formal education or just picking up a book and reading, right? Knowledge is power. And mentorship, a lot like Ida, you were talking about service and volunteering. I really didn't get serious about volunteering until I was an undergrad and I joined my sorority. And that was one of the pillars that we had to give back. And I love it, right? And it just wasn't something I was doing on my own. And I got to learn from other professional Latinas that have gone through it, and they were able to teach me some things. So I think mentorship is huge. Like, who can you reach out to and, kind of take under your wing, if you will? Or I have a mentor to this day. I think I always will have one. It's always about growing and learning. So
sometimes like one thing that I'll tell people, I come from Miami is where I mainly grew up. And I saw somebody say Haitian on here. I'll tell people, do research on Haiti. First of all, Haiti is a Latin American country. It's not there, people, it was colonized by France, but it's on the island of Hispaniola. It shares its island with the Dominican Republic, and they are Afro-Latinos. They are part of the Latino spectrum, which a lot of people don't know. A lot of people who have been really ugly towards Haitian people. I grew up in Miami, and very discriminatory and mistreating, and I mean Black American people, Latinos, Latinx, everybody, not just white people. Haitian people who kicked down the door for our liberation. A lot of people don't know the history of Haiti and how glorious they are. They don't know about Toussaint Louverture and, the way that they led for our freedom and why they've been paying for it ever since, and being in debt and being mistreated. And I think it's important for us to inform ourselves about the people, because sometimes if you see yourself saying something ignorant, like, I don't like those people, I don't like these, whatever. Why don't research them people and figure out who those people are? Because you don't know all of them. And, you might have had a negative experience, but they paved the way for liberation throughout Latin America and the Caribbean. And, a lot of people who are in America who idolize people like Malcolm X and Louis Farrakhan and Stokely Carmichael. And, all of these people have Caribbean roots, and they ate plantains just like me. And they, like Marcus Garvey, those are Caribbean people. And even though a lot of people try to divide us, we as Caribbeans have a lot in common as a Caribbean people, because we have our Caribbean history. And when you say you don't like, that they're not American, you got to include them in that bunch, because they are Caribbean people, Malcolm X, Grenada, and I just think it's important to understand history and to learn, because a lot of people, they are getting their history from YouTube.
Right.
Yeah.
And a lot of the stuff that you're seeing online is skewed, and it's
now. Yeah. With that being said, though, like the average Joe, right? Where do they begin to learn this information, and how do they know what they're consuming is accurate or inaccurate or valid or invalid? Like, what do they, you know what I mean? Like, what is some suggestions you would give to that person?
The library. Get off the internet and go to the library.
Get a library card.
Yeah, and the reality of it is that a lot of things that you read is just a person's philosophy, right? Because science is science, and even science is ever changing, right? Science, what people believe to be scientifically proven.
It's all theory.
Yeah. So, but you have critical thinking skills, and you have the ability to read a myriad of things, and you can develop your own concepts about things and what seems right to you based on the data, if you are reading more than one thing. But if you are conservative and everything that you read is written by conservative people, they're going to reaffirm everything that you believe, and some of those things may not necessarily be true, accurate, or right. They just may not be. So you have to reach over and just start studying everything, so that you can have a holistic approach to the thing that you are studying. I'm a progressive. I consider myself politically progressive, but I still want to know why some conservatives feel the way they feel about the climate change. And then reading about it, I understand that it defies some of their religious beliefs. Right. It really has nothing to do with science. And so for me, I have to reject that thinking, because we all know that 2 + 2 is 4. And, there are some things that are scientifically proven, and people work years and years and years to prove those things. And I'm not going to allow myself to be driven by religious doctrine because that, if you believe in an all powerful God that created you in God's image, then you should have the ability to think that you should be godlike, right? Which is, I have the ability to discern and say, this is not correct. But I just think that the library is always a good place to begin, because those books have been there and are going to continue to be there. And the internet, those cliff notes that a lot of people are reading usually are, they're perspectives, they're people's opinions. People listen to Sean Hannity and think he's a journalist. He's a television personality.
Right. And I think reading the one thing that we know for sure, right, about Americans, that Americans are not reading. like just in general, like picking up a book. And I think just normalizing it a little bit, like if it is difficult for you, and I'm not trying to be funny or sarcastic in any way, start off small, start off with just a few minutes. Sometimes like I'll hear from patients like, oh, I just can't concentrate. I know for me after grad school, like I did not even want to pick up a book because my brain was mush. So I had to intentionally, like, it was like becoming, I think Michelle Obama was like the first book I started picking up again to like, I just want to leisure read. And I had to like do it for like 10 minutes or 30 minutes. And then I'm like, oh yeah, I remember I used to like this. So I hear all the time, like, I'm a bad reader. I've never enjoyed it. Find something that you enjoy first. And then, you know, you can dive into some of the education pieces of it. But I think it is scary that folks are just not reading. So I think even going to the library is like, what adults are going to the library, which I think we all should.
There's book clubs and stuff out here too.
Book
you know
clubs,
what I mean? Like
yes.
you can get, I started a book club because we talked about this a few episodes back because I was a hater and I needed to be around more women. And so I started a book club of women so I could learn to get along with women. But it's evolved into this beautiful thing where we're reading Audre Lorde and, you know, Stephen Covey and just all these different variety of books. And it's expanding how I look at things. You know, it's the diversity, right? You need that. You need to diversify your reading. And back to what you were saying earlier, Ida, about like you started reading about, you know, right-wing thoughts and thing like that. Mike would always say that. I would watch him watching all these videos and reading Candace Owens and all this. I'm like, why are you entertaining this broad? Why are you? And he was like, because she has a reason for thinking this way. And I'm trying to figure out what that is. I'm interested because I don't get that perspective. And so she has it. So what does that mean?
For her it's money.
You know, but yeah, but he's still like, you know, but most right, it is money. It's all about the dollar, right? But just him getting an understanding of that has helped me to say, okay, I don't know everything. And that's, I think, a big problem too, right? We think we know what we know and that's what we know. And that's all that matters when in fact, we don't know shit.
No.
We know very, very little. We know very, very little.
No. We're still learning.
Oh my God. This conversation has been magical. Like we are nearing its end.
Right.
Ida, you girl, I knew you was gonna bring the heat.
I love having conversations about forward motion.
Right.
Yes.
Absolutely.
When I broke down my list of who I was gonna have on, I was like, oh yeah, somebody that's gonna bring the truth serum is definitely.
I love it.
Bring the knowledge.
Say it for you. So any I want to say any finalized thoughts? What is your? We talked about marginalization. We talked a lot about history, right? And I think that's really, really important that we put more energy and effort on knowing our history.
Absolutely.
Because I'm in my ignorance, I'll tell you, I know some of my history, but I don't know enough to be telling nobody shit. So we need to know our history. What are some final pins? Like if you were to have one takeaway that you'd be like, this is what you can do to be less petty about marginalization or to be less petty in general, Ida, what would that be?
I think pettiness comes from worthiness issues. That's just my personal perspective. I'm not a scientist or a therapist or anybody. I'm just saying, I'm speaking from my own perspective. Being petty comes from feeling small, wanting to be heard, you know, feeling like you matter, you want to matter. I know that that's where it comes from, being hurt. And because underneath anger, there's pain, right? And so, and I know because I've been on stage and the audience isn't feeling me. And then I'll just go and start berating the audience and just going in on the audience. And then I realized that it was just, they hurt my feelings because they didn't think I was funny, or they were just listening and they didn't give me that I thought that I needed at the moment. So I think that one of the ways to really is starting for me, it all starts with, I believe all the books of doctrine of the Bible, the Torah, Tanakh, the Bible, the Quran, all speak about writing things down. I think you hear it all the time. For me, it's really sitting down and writing down like my goals, but my goals never neglect my emotional goals, right? Like my mental health goals. Because I used to only write goals of like, I want to be a millionaire. I want a TV show. I want 10 movies. Like I would write that. But I never really thought about how important all the other stuff was so that stuff could actually happen.
Yes.
And so just really understanding my worth. Like I have it written on my walls in my room, like I am worthy, I am magnetic, I am kind, I am success, I am love, I am health, I am wealth. Like those are the things that I have around me to remind me so that when somebody does something that hurts my feelings, like it happened just the other day, and I reacted so ugly. I mean, I told this person that they weren't shit in public. I was like, you ain't shit. And it was because my feelings were hurt. And I couldn't acknowledge that in the moment. That was just too evolved for the moment. Especially when people around you are like, yeah, he ain't shit. Like they just reaffirm what you're saying. But the truth of it is that I felt small, insecure. I felt looked over. I felt unseen. I felt unheard in that moment. And my reaction was to attack. And so I think that a lot of the issues that we see that happen in life with most people that are racist or homophobic, that's underneath it. It's fear, it's hurt, it's pain. And so I think that the way to deal with that is to just confront those truths about yourself. You don't have to tell anybody. You could just sit in the room by yourself and say, man, that pretty girl really made me feel insecure about myself. Absolutely. I felt ugly in the room with her. Everybody was looking at her. Like, what? It's okay to have that conversation with yourself, because it really, once you can say that, then you can start healing from it, right? Because you can admit it. And so for me, that's my approach, is to try my best to really work out these issues that have been driving me, because I've been in pain for so long that I just thought it was normal.
Yeah.
And, it ain't got to be like that.
We don't have to live this way. We don't have to just survive. We can thrive. Emotionally. And that's super, be less petty with your time, space, and energy. I had to create a place for me to stop being so petty, like for me to stop holding on to these unworthy feelings that I was unwilling to acknowledge in myself. Yep. So
I took a screenshot today, and it goes at what you were saying about insecurity, right? And it's interesting how this concept has come up as we're talking about this topic of marginalization. Jealousy is just fear that someone else is more worthy. And I was like, wow. There's a therapist that I follow who posted this, NY therapist. And I was like, whew, that is next. But you are worthy, right? We are worthy. And I love the positive affirmations as well. That's just so important. Speak to yourself kindly.
Yeah. And it's okay to celebrate your wins. That's something that I learned. I blew past so many things that I was able to accomplish. And I had survivor's remorse. I had imposter syndrome. I never celebrated anything. I just kept going, kept my head down, keep working. People around me were reiterating that I should do that because they had their own worthiness issues. And I was just walking around, just not celebrating my wins. And then when my friend died a couple of weeks ago, it made me really understand that you should celebrate your wins, and you should embrace the moment, and you should live in joy, because you don't know when it's going to end. And that this finish line that we have in our head that we think exists may not even be real with our time here. And so I just learned to I'm just working on that. Just really understanding, celebrating your wins. It's okay. You deserve it. You are worthy. And there's nothing wrong with celebrating your wins. Those are your goals. You set them, you surpassed them. You should be able to say, I did that. It's okay.
Right. Absolutely.
I don't even know if I need to say my last. I don't know if we need to add anything to that. Do you have something pressing to say, Alex?
No, I mean, I think these were all just.
I think she put in a word.
Put it all together. Yeah, all of that, everybody. All of that.
And if y'all want to know more about imposter syndrome, you might want to check out our last week episode, because we talked about that very thing that we all struggle with, and it's very real for us. And so that's a great episode to check out. Let's talk about this HBO special though before we get up out of here. You just filmed your first 1 hour HBO special. When does that actually come out?
It comes out in the fall. We don't know the date yet, but it will come out before the year is out. Yeah, it was a lot. It was in the midst of I was on the road with my friend opening for me, and he died like the Thursday before I taped it. And so it was
he was your opener.
He opened for me, and so I have Nick, Antoine Young, Ramon Ramos, and Gadiel de Olbe are my 4 openers, and I alternate. And Nick had gotten married, and he had his daughter, but Nick was somebody that I would open for me when the opportunity lent itself. He texted me to open for me in Washington at Nate's Club, and I had already booked my other opener. But Nate texted me and said, "Yo, I gotta go on vacation. I can't take this. Do you mind if Nick hosts?" So I was supposed to be with Nick that weekend. So Nick came out. Anthony, as his father would like for us to call him, came out, and we spent the whole weekend together, with the exception of us sleeping, because he slept in his room and me and my daughter slept in our room. He was with us the whole time till the moment we got on the plane to come back. And then that Thursday he passed away. And he was so excited about my special. He had texted me about it. We were, he was very excited. And then he was gone. And it was, Tony had lost his son. So preparing for the special, because I wrote this during the pandemic, post breakup, I broke up, I moved out. And then it was just so much pain that I left on that stage last Saturday, being just dealing with so much loss, personal loss for me, the person that I was with for the last years that I love and adore still to this moment. And, losing Nick, and then losing Tony, losing Serene. It was just a lot. So this special is very special to me because it was a lesson in comedy for me, having to go on stage and have to do
all of that.
Wow.
So,
well, I'm very sorry for your loss, and I'm excited to watch the special this fall.
I'm very excited to see it.
It's called Fighting Words.
What is it called?
Fighting Words.
Fighting words. That's hilarious. I definitely can see you throwing out some fighting words.
Right. Along with her theme of "Who does this bitch think she is?"
I know. I put that down actually in my own evolution. We got some new shirts.
That's good. That's good. Sometimes you gotta let some shit go. And in fact, my shirts used to say, "I'm so petty." I was like, "Girl, stop affirming that shit. Be less petty."
Yes, I remember that shirt.
Yes, be less petty. You don't want to be petty. Why you keep affirming? I'm so petty. Look at me. No, thank you.
I can't wait to go back to Chicago to just ride around in your electric car with you,
girl. But a little bit of time we got till we got to charge that shit up.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you
You can stay backstage. You don't have to go immediately. I'm gonna take you out of the chat really quick while I do the outros. And yes, does anybody have any final questions or any love or anything for Aida that y'all want to say before we hop out of here? Quick, get it in. You got like 17 seconds.
Oh, we appreciate you for tuning in.
We do. That go one. Boom, boom, boom.
Thank you for watching. That was awesome.
Thank you. I am gonna go because I'm gonna go eat with my daughter.
Yeah.
But thank you for having me. I love you.
I love you. This was beautiful.
Yes.
And love you both. And so thank you for this conversation and sisterhood. And women can have conversations and be different and be the same. And I'm here for that.
Yes. Snaps to that. Have a great evening, everybody.
Dropped another word on the way out the door. Like, let me tell you this as I walk out the door.
Right.
Thank you. All right, y'all. I wrote outros, so I'm gonna read them. Y'all not gonna just.
Oh, we're here for it.
Out for y'all here. Thank you so much for tuning in to Be Less Petty Comedy Self-Help Podcast. Guess what, y'all? The last 3 guests and final 2 shows are all men. Yes, which is going to be an interesting shift of perspective in petty thinking. Next show, September 13th, we have Rodney Perry from Medea's Big Happy Family and Once Upon a Time in Detroit, and tickets for the in-person live finale on September 27th with Chicago's own Leon Rogers and Ballhead Phillips go on sale in exactly 7 days. So be sure to follow Be Less Petty on IG or sign up for our emails on kellyhoward.com so that you're the first to get the tickets. We are only selling 30 tickets to this show, so do not miss on your opportunity to be in the live studio audience for that. Also, job alert, we're looking for interns, social media specialists, and video and graphic designers. So if you've always wanted to try your foot in the podcast world, email us your resume and bio at belesspetty@gmail.com. Let's give a huge thank you to our producers, Wendy Mateo and Lisa Beasley, as well as Chicago For Real on Twitch. And lastly, remember to always be less petty, because most shit is not that serious. We'll see you back here in 2 weeks. Bye.
Bye. Adios.
We always look weird as I end it.